From the massive 18-inch guns of the Yamato that shook the very foundations of the ocean, to the swarms of destroyers armed with the deadliest torpedoes of the war, this is the hardware that allowed the Imperial Japanese Navy to dominate the Pacific in the early 40s. We're talking about a fleet built almost entirely on home soil. With one major British exception, every keel laid and every rivet driven was a product of Japanese shipyards like Kure, Yokosuka, and Nagasaki. They built a blue water navy designed to go toe-to-toe with the world's superpowers and win. We are kicking this loadout off with the kings of the surface, battleships. First, you have the Yamato Class, the Yamato and the Musashi. These weren't just ships, they were floating fortresses, the heaviest and most armed battleships ever to displace water. We're talking about 46 centimeters main guns that could hurl a shell the weight of a compact car over the horizon. They were the ultimate expression of the decisive battle doctrine, built to crush an enemy fleet in a single afternoon. Then there's the Nagato Class. Before the Yamato giants arrived, the Nagato and the Mutsu were the pride of the fleet. The Nagato was the flagship during the Pearl Harbor attack, a fast, heavy-hitting battle wagon that carried 16-inch guns and served as a symbol of naval power for the entire nation. Next, the EC Class. The EC and the Huga. These two had a serious identity crisis mid-war. Originally dreadnoughts, the desperate need for air power saw them converted into hybrid battleship carriers. They had a flight deck slapped on the rear, trying to launch planes while still hauling heavy battleship armor. It was a weird, desperate engineering flex that proved how dire the situation had become. The Fuso Class. The Fuzo and Yamashiro. You know these by their pagoda masts that looked like Jenga towers stacking to the moon. They were older, World War I era designs, modernized to stay relevant. While they were too slow to run with the carrier strike groups, they were kept in reserve for surface actions where brute force was the only language spoken. And then, the outlier. If you're finding value in this breakdown, please subscribe for more military tech analysis. Check out our channel for similar videos and share this with anyone interested in these high-stakes deployments. The Congo Class. The Congo, Hiei, Kirishima, and Haruna. Here is your asterisk. The Congo was the last Japanese capital ship built overseas by Vickers in the UK. But don't let that fool you. The Japanese reconstructed her and her sisters into fast battleships. These were the workhorses. Because they had the speed to keep up with the carriers, they saw more combat than almost any other heavy metal in the inventory, switching gears to the power projection tools, aircraft carriers. The fleet carriers were the tip of the spear, the Akagi and Kaga. These were converted battlecruiser and battleship hulls turned into flat tops. They were the distinct, massive profiles that led the Kido Butai. They carried the veteran pilots who wreaked havoc across the Pacific in the early days. Then the Soryu and Hiryu, purpose-built, fast, and aggressive. These were the greyhounds of the carrier fleet, instrumental at Midway until the tide turned. The Shokaku and Zuikaku, the Cranes. These were arguably the best carriers Japan ever fielded. Fast, well-armored, and with a massive air group capacity. The Zuikaku was a survivor, the last of the Pearl Harbor attackers to remain afloat, fighting a war of attrition she couldn't win. The Taiho, the armored deck monster. This was supposed to be the answer to American dive bombers, with a flight deck that could tank a bomb hit. But a single torpedo and poor damage control turned her into a floating fuel air bomb. The Shinano, the tragic giant. Built on the third Yamato hull, this was the largest aircraft carrier of the war. It was a support carrier designed to rearm and refuel other planes. She didn't even make it out of her own waters before an American submarine sent her to the bottom. The Unryu Class. Unryu, Amagi, and Katsuragi. These were late-war attempts to mass-produce the successful Hiryu design. But by the time they hit the water, Japan had run out of pilots to fly from them. We also have the light carriers. The Hosho, the granddaddy of them all, the first purpose-built carrier in the world. The Rujo, a top-heavy experimental flat top that fought hard in the Aleutians. And the converted tenders like the Chitos and Chiyoda, auxiliary ships forced into frontline combat roles as the main fleet dwindled. Then the escort carriers, the Taiyo Class and Shinyo. These weren't fleet killers. They were convoy babysitters trying desperately to keep the merchant marine alive against the American submarine Wolfpacks. Moving on to the heavy hitters of the scouting line, heavy cruisers. The Myoko Class. Myoko, Nachi, Haguro, and Ashigara. These ships were treaty-busting heavyweights. They carried 10 8-inch guns and a massive battery of torpedoes. These weren't just escorts. They were surface warfare beasts designed to savage enemy lines at night. The Takao Class. Takao, Atago, Maya, and Chokai, recognized by their massive castle-like bridge structures. These were command ships, floating headquarters that packed a punch. Maya eventually got refitted into an anti-aircraft cruiser, bristling with guns to swat planes out of the sky. The Moami Class. Mogami, Mikuma, Suzuya, and Kumano. The cheaters, built as light cruisers with 6-inch guns to skirt naval treaties. They were designed from day one to swap those out for 8-inch heavy guns the moment the shooting started. The Mogami herself later got converted into an aviation cruiser, carrying a deck of seaplanes in the back. The Tone Class, Tone, and Chakuma. These were unique tactical platforms. They stacked all their main turrets forward, leaving the entire rear deck clear for float planes. Their job was to find the enemy fleet so the carriers could kill it. Step it down a notch to the light cruisers. The Tenriyu Class, old school, 3-stackers, small, fast, and the leaders of destroyer flotillas, the Kuma, Nagara, and Sendai classes. These were the standard issue leaders. Ships like the Sendai and Jinsu were famous for leading the Tokyo Express night runs, engaging in vicious close-quarters knife fights in the Solomons. Then the torpedo monsters, the Kitakami and Ui. These started as Kuma-class cruisers but were converted into torpedo cruisers, stacking effectively 40 torpedo tubes per side. It was a wall of underwater hate waiting to be unleashed. Later, Kitakami was even modified to carry Kaiten suicide torpedoes. The Yubari, an experimental design that packed heavy firepower into a tiny hull. It looked good on paper, but in practice, it was a cramped, fragile ship that proved you can't cheat physics. The Aano Class. Aano, Noshiro, Yahagi, and Sakawa. Modern, sleek, and fast. The Yahagi is legendary for accompanying the Yamato on its final suicide run, fighting off hundreds of American planes until she couldn't float anymore. The Oyodo, a command cruiser built to coordinate submarine operations, famously serving as the combined fleet flagship towards the end of the war. Now let's talk about the workhorses, the backbone of the IJN destroyers, the Kamikaze and Minkaz classes. The older generation, by World War II, these were mostly relegated to convoy escort and patrol, but they were fast and carried the torpedo pedigree that defined the fleet. The Fubuki Class. This is the game changer. When the Fubuki launched, it made every other destroyer in the world obsolete overnight. Covered gun turrets, smokeless powder, and heavy torpedo armament. Ships like Ayanami and Amagiri were absolute terrors in night battles. The Akatsuki Class, an improved Fubuki. The Hibiki was one of the few lucky survivors of the war, a testament to the ruggedness of the design. The Shiratsuyu Class, Shigure, and Udachi, the Nightmare of Solomon. Udachi earned a reputation for charging wildly into American lines, engaging battleships and cruisers at point-blank range in pure chaos. The Kagaro Class, the apex of Japanese destroyer design. Yukikaze, the unsinkable ship, survived the entire war despite being in every major scrap. Isakaze and Hamikaze were right there with her. These ships carried the Type 93 Long Lance torpedo, an oxygen-fueled killer that could strike from miles away without leaving a bubble trail. The Yugumo Class, an evolution of the Kagero. Naganami and Takanami fought viciously in the supply runs to Guadalcanal. These were high-performance machines that were run ragged by the tempo of operations. The Akazuki Class. These were specialized tools. Akazuki, Teruzuki, Suzutsuki. Unlike the others, their main job wasn't torpedo attacks. It was putting a ceiling of steel into the sky. Their 100mm high-velocity guns were the best anti-aircraft weapons Japan had, designed to screen the carriers from dive bombers. The Shimakaze, the experimental speed demon. A one-off prototype that packed an absurd 15 torpedo tubes and a high-pressure steam engine that pushed her over 40 knots. She was the Ferrari of destroyers, too expensive to mass-produce, but terrifyingly fast. The Matsu and Tachibana classes, the wartime reality check. As the industry crumbled, Japan needed ships fast. These Type D destroyers were smaller, simpler, and welded together in record time. They weren't pretty, but ships like the Take proved they could still kill. taking out Allied destroyers even in the final months. Let's go silent with the submarines. Japan operated a massive, diverse underwater fleet, unlike anything else in the war. The Type A, the headquarters boats, I-9 and I-10. These were command centers equipped with float planes to coordinate attacks. The Type B, the scouting workhorses. The I-19, famous for the single most devastating torpedo spread in history, sinking the carrier Wasp and damaging a battleship with one salvo. The I-25, which actually launched a plane to drop incendiary bombs on the Oregon coast, the only time the U.S. mainland was bombed by enemy aircraft. The Type C, the attack specialists. These carried midget submarines on their decks to infiltrate harbors like Pearl Harbor and Sydney. The Sentoku Class, the I-400, I-401, and I-402. These are the Leviathans of the deep, the largest submarines built until the nuclear age. They were literally underwater aircraft carriers housing 3 Sarin bombers in a watertight hangar. The plan was to surface off the Panama Canal and strike the locks, technological marvels that arrived just too late. The Rho class medium coastal boats, Rho 33 through Rho 68. While the I boats roamed the Pacific, these held the line closer to home. The Ha class, the Sentaka high-speed boats, Ha 201, advanced streamlined hulls designed for high underwater speed to dodge Allied sonar and escorts. We can't ignore the escort ships, the Kaiboken, the Shimushu, Eterofu, Mikura, and Ikuru classes. As the American submarine blockade strangled Japan, these small frigates were pumped out by the hundreds. They were the unsung, battered defenders of the lifelines, fighting a losing battle against superior technology and numbers. Simple, rugged, and completely expendable. Finally, the specialized gear, the seaplane tenders like Nishin and Mizuho, vital for a navy that operated across vast oceans without enough airstrips. They could drop a base anywhere there was calm water. The river gunboats, Atami, Fushimi, shallow draft fighters that patrolled the rivers of China, enforcing control deep inland. The mine layers like Tsugaru and Itsukushima, specialized vessels designed to turn sea lanes into no-go zones. If you're finding value in this breakdown, please subscribe for more military tech analysis. Check out our channel for similar videos and share this with anyone interested in these high-stakes deployments.